Welcome back to the Effective Leadership course. In today's lesson, we'll talk about how to be a good leader, effective leader, daily leadership, and the routine of a leader. The 3 tasks you have to do repeatedly. Hit thumbs up if you want more content related to leadership and management. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel too. Hello there everyone! I think I've lost count of how many times I've read articles about what the morning routine of a leader should be. When they wake up, how they make their bed, what they eat for breakfast, and even that 5 a.m. club thing. I confess that around 2015, at the height of my experience when I was 23 years of age, I experimented a lot with it because I really wanted to improve as a person. Who doesn't want a shortcut? There's one thing I noticed from these articles. The ones that weren't written by young people like me with their assumptions were written by people trying to sell me the products and affiliate links. Which is fine, but I started to ask myself, what do the most experienced people say about the routine of a leader and how to be an effective leader? The focus of this lesson will be to explore how to be a good leader, especially for first-time leaders, on what they should focus on learning now that they will spend more time working on in the future. That is, what are the most common things in the routine of a leader? Getting into the topic of how to be a good leader. I will draw a lot from a specialization program that I took, illustrating with my stories. So don't take me as instructor who spent decades studying leadership, because it definitely isn't my case. I'm still learning. When I was designing the course, my first leadership role, my focus was on teaching the crucial leadership concepts that I realized leaders needed, especially when they didn't come from business school. I did a lot of research and came up with a series of skills and tasks. Seriously, the original list contained more than 50 main activities, not to mention subtasks. Let's dive into these concepts. Let's draw the big picture here. To be able to summarize all these skills that make up how to be a good leader, I used the Pareto principle. Essentially, Pareto showed that approximately 80% of the lands in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. His discoveries came from the observation of his garden. After a growing season, Pareto was able to determine that 20% of the pea pods produce 80% of the peas. Since then, it has been used in the business world to say that 80% of its revenue comes from 20% of its products, or that 20% of your activities cause 80% of the results. I applied this empirically, but seeing how much the activities were repeated in these lists, and I said, what are the 20% of the activities that take 80% of the routine of a leader? Very focused on teaching new leaders on how to have more confidence for their first weeks. In a probably anecdotal article on LinkedIn, the author mentions Pareto's rules for various leadership activities, which I find very consistent with my perception. He goes on various activities leaders perform and comments on how to apply the Pareto rule. For the author, in the decision-making process, you can gather 80% of the information to make your decision in 20% of the allocated time. For new ideas, 80% of them must come from your team and 20% from you. In communication, you should spend 80% of your time listening to your team, 20% talking to them. In people management, avoid spending 80% of your time with the 20% who are underperforming. On productivity, you must spend 80% of your time on 20% of your most important work. Now, going back to the University of Illinois, the specialization program on Coursera is Strategic Leadership Management. They mentioned that there are 2 critical tasks that take over the routine of a leader. One of the critical tasks is to make decisions. Leaders have to make decisions about where to go, and they have to make decisions about how to get there. The other critical task for leaders is to implement these decisions. This is said in one of the lessons in the course. They also mention that the whole process of creating vision, goals, and the like are decision-making process. Therefore, leaders make decisions and implement them. It is also mentioned that one of the greatest leverages that a leader has to make his work easier is inclusion, including others in the process. If you make decisions and implement them, you are not a leader, you are an operator. And yes, there may be cases where you have to make things on your own. We can think about this as participation. Open up the channels of communications, asking other people to get involved in the decisions that leaders have to make. This immediately offers two kinds of benefits. There are information benefits and there are motivation benefits. Information benefits are what I think of as the head of effective leadership. Motivation benefits are what I think of as the heart of effective leadership. Managers often overestimate the ability to make high-quality decisions without the input of others. Or in some cases, perhaps they fear it is their job to make these decisions without help. In other words, to ask others for assistance might be perceived as a sign of weakness. But inclusiveness provides more information, and more information means better decisions. We'll base our lesson today on these points to define what are the 3 tasks of a leader that occupy 80% of their routine. How about that? This was a quick overview of the literature. Okay, let's go to practice. The routine of a leader is about working with people. Here's what happens. One thing I say a lot to my followers or colleagues who are leaders is that you don't have